Welcome, everyone. And on today's issue of Capital Kahuna's podcast, I'm really excited to meet and discuss capital with Neal Anderson. Neal, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. So, for our listeners and viewers, Neal is in the founder side of things. So, Neal, why don't you tell us about how you decided to become a founder? I mean, maybe it wasn't a decision, maybe it just happened, but tell us your story of how your company and how you decided to launch it.
Well, to give just a little context, I kind of came up through the ranks, as a sales guy. I paid my way through college and also law school, selling educational books and some CDs door to door, and worked about 80 hours to 90 hours a week. In the summertime, 6 days a week on straight commission. I went to Indiana University and then went to law school in Vermont. And we would do an exchange program. So like kids from Indiana would go to Texas and they would go to, maybe North Carolina, and we would live there, and we would have to go knock on doors to find our place to live, which a lot of people are like, man, that's kind of crazy. And, you talk about breaking belief barriers, learning how, how people tick and why they don't. And, being able to pick yourself up. And, we ran in between houses. So this wasn't just lollygagging, we said positive phrases in between the houses. And we were able to make enough money to pay our own way through school, which was really cool. And then I continued to do that and recruit some teams of other kids to do it through law school, because I knew that the number one skill that you need to have is sales. And then the second one is how can you lead other people in sales? It doesn't matter what you do, whether you're a teacher, a doctor, a candlestick maker, a podcaster. You've got to sell people. You got to sell people on wanting to come on the show. You have to sell people on maybe advertising with you. It never stops. And then as a parent, you're the consummate salesperson. The problem is most people don't do it right. And, they see the world sort of through their eyes, and it's hard for them to jump in other people's shoes. So, that's sort of how I came up, and ended up working for a legal research company for about 9 years. I sold really, really high-end real estate. Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez at that time were people that were where I was working, and then did a couple startups. My wife has a really big essential oil business. I wrote a couple books on how to sell that and how to lead a team, which was really successful. And I've been able to coach a ton of people, and then that's where I met Jared Yellen, and we just really remained friends. And we were trying to figure out how to do something together. And, we knew that we were supposed to do something together, but it's really hard to do that and have it right. And we wanted it to be right. And I'd always had this idea where, how cool would it be is if these, like moms mostly, could have a gig job, and they could basically turn their phone on like they would drive Uber, and they could sell any product that they're already selling, by giving recommendations to people on Facebook. So some mom's like, hey, what stroller should I buy? Or what, summer camp should the kids go to? Or, whatever it is. I'm gonna get a bike for my kid. I want a new, boat, So what's happening is people are giving recommendations, but they're not monetizing it. So I said, how cool would it be if you get a relationship with the company, and they would rather have their best customers selling rather than salespeople, right? And then you give them a piece of it. So we're working on a company right now called My Sales Champion, where you basically turn on your phone, and the companies that you signed up to sell for, you'll just get leads, and then you'll be able to make money. It's basically called the Uber sales. And the problem with Amazon and Walmart is they have to warehouse and they have to ship. We won't. We're just connecting customers. So it's going to be really, really awesome. And they're the people that you'd want talking to you, because you go to a car lot or you go to a boat lot or you go somewhere, you're like, I really don't want to talk to you, right? But if somebody is like, oh, hey, I know you just got a Traeger grill. How do you like it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's awesome, right? Well, why shouldn't I get a cut of that? Right. So we're making that happen. So I pitched it. We funded it in 4 phone calls. It's awesome. And everybody's going to use it. It's going to be great. But then I was like, and Jared was having these sort of like Shark Tank shows, right? And I told him, I said, hey, this whole thing with the mask and no mask and vaccines and all that. And I said, I've always wanted to have choices in companies and services based on people's values. Like I go to the dentist, I always look up, did they go to Indiana University, right, for dental school? Like, are they a Yankees fan? Like, just, and even politically, like I want to hang out with people that are like me. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
So I said, how cool would it be is if we created an app that was like Google Maps, but we knew everybody's values and it would just drive you there. So basically what happens, we're in the, we don't need much more money for that. And if anybody listening wants to contact me, that's fine. And that would be great. But you're basically going to put your values into the app. And then let's say you want to go to a coffee shop that doesn't require a mask. They have pro-American values. They have gluten-free options and they're Yankee fans, right? It will drive me right there. Let's say you want to find a job and you have these certain criteria. So some of the criteria that we'll have are, like the mask optional, vaccine optional, American made, veteran owned, child friendly. You ever take your kids to a restaurant, and then you find out, wait a minute, what's that on the TV? Like, that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Even like faith driven, people, Christians, or, even, concealed carry, like here in the States, people have their concealed carry license, but they don't want to have to forget, leave it, they're going to leave it in the car. Can they bring it in? Well, there would be a way for you to figure that out. And, we even get down to progressive or liberal or whichever, and people are going to be able to decide on anything that they purchase based on their values. So I went ahead and pitched that, and they were like, man, that's like awesome. Let's go ahead and do it. So we're in that process now, which is really exciting. But there's been a lot in between that got me prepared to be able to even do this. So,
well, let's talk a little bit. I mean, I love in Jared's world, and I'll put a link in at the end of the show if anybody wants to follow Jared. But one of the things I find is the serial entrepreneurs. I just love the passion, because it's like, okay, I solved that problem. What's next?
right.
And I love. I didn't know you were actually the one behind the Uber of sales. That was one Jared shared with me a long time ago. And I was like, okay, when that's ready, I need to know that, because I have a lot of friends that are salespeople, and they're always looking for that next gig.
Yeah.
Now, what made you comfortable? I guess you're looking at something completely. I'm gonna guess you weren't very, you're not the coder behind this. So how did you?
No.
How did you go from, abstract concept? I don't know. Was it drawn on a napkin? Was it a whiteboard? How did you go from there to confidently standing in front of, Jared's Shark Tank and Shark Tank like show and pitching it and saying, "Hey, everybody, I'm looking for capital." What was the spark that led you on that path?
I just knew it was going to work. Like I literally knew it. I saw it before it even came down to the paper. I usually write it on the back of a bill, an envelope. I have a lot of that. It's funny because you got to grab it anywhere. I don't have good enough handwriting to write on napkins. So when people are like, it's a napkin idea, I'm like, I'm tearing the napkin and I'm doing all that. Like, so a good envelope, like this right here, which I'm taking notes on now. It works really well. I knew that it would work. I've done so many sales calls, and also we have a huge network marketing business. Like I already understand there's a lot of people that don't want to do that. Like they don't want to have to lead a team. They don't have to go to the meetings. They don't have to do the rah-rah, but they have 2 hours in between like their nap times for their kids. And they want to go ahead and sell, whether it's a high-end mattress or it's a Traeger grill, or it's something to do with, birthing, whether it's breast pumps or all that. Like a lot of people are just not going on the internet and gonna spend $400 or $500 on something without talking to somebody. And reviews are fine, but there's nothing better than talking to somebody who's already going through that and saying, hey, tell me what you like, tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you know how it is when you talk to somebody that has it, right? That isn't a salesperson. Yeah. They're going to tell you, one thing I don't like the Traeger is, my God, you got to clean it out all the time. But I can also cook from my phone when I'm out in the boat, and I don't have to keep coming home. And, so you sort of get that picture, but enthusiasm sells. And what we're looking for are people that are already enthusiastic about things And there's no salesperson that will be more enthusiastic than the person that's already using it every day and loves it. So I was like, why wouldn't this thing work? Like,
Love
it's
it.
crazy. And the other thing is, I mean, it was a bold statement. I'm like, we're going to be bigger than Amazon and Walmart. Why wouldn't we be? Like, why not? We don't have to ship anything. We don't have to warehouse anything.
Yeah.
None of it. We don't even have to deliver it. Like, somebody else will do that. All we're
Yeah.
doing is we're taking people that are people's best customers and we're making them their salespeople. And to all the salespeople out here, we're not trying to cut you out, because you're going to actually be able to sell for 5 or 6 companies instead of just one. And you'll be able to do it when you want. All you do is, like Uber, is you turn on your phone. So you ask, like, how did you, like, since I'm not techie, but the thing is, we all use that. And I have a mind for trying to solve issues, right? Problems, opportunities that are in the marketplace already. And I was like, that's a huge issue. Moms don't want to have to go to a workplace, right? If they don't have to.
Yeah.
And they also want to be able to build their job around their lifestyle rather than their lifestyle around their job. And I learned this just from working with, so many thousands of people in the network marketing space, is you have these passionate moms and they're like, I love it that I can make an extra $400 a month and I don't have to go to some place and sit behind a desk for, 10 hours a week or whichever. It's just the flexibility. And then, the other part is, I knew that with Jared's team and the fact that we have a couple hundred employees that already build all the tech. So most people that have ideas don't have the systems in place. I mean, one of my partners is Grant Cardone. I don't know if you know that name.
Yes.
But he's a pretty big guy, right? So he's one of my partners. Jared's my other partner. So I've got the person that has the tech and writes all the code and does everything, right? From all the legal to the accounting, everything. And then I've got the number one sales guy in marketing and go-to-market person on the planet. So it's
That's
like,
a
why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it work?
great team. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of, and I had a little bit of inside because I knew Jared, but I still had to pass, they're not going to, take something that's, stupid idea, so still had to have that, but yeah.
I love it. And so now, how far along on that journey? Because I usually interview people, and a lot of the founders I've met, that they are founder for a reason. If it's a technical company, they're the coder of choice, and then at some
Sure.
point they decide it's a business. Um, I love the idea that working with Jared's team has freed you up, so that here's the first idea. Okay, you let it run, and now you're working on idea number 2. Was that a hard pivot for you, or was it just a
No,
natural, easy?
no, that was really easy, because that's the point, is that the team is there. I mean, I live in the Triangle, which is like the Silicon Valley of the East.
Yep.
There's a lot of ideas that are here in the Research Triangle Park, and there's a lot of smart people, and it engulfs people's lives. And it's because they're spending their time trying to go find all these people. We're already building 120 companies right now, right? I mean, it's a system and a process. Like, that's what frees it up. And I think, from a pivot standpoint, that's how kind of I've always been being able to have my feet in the water in a couple things. And, they're like, oh, good to great. You've got to do, I get that. But there's other people that can do that. A CEO isn't just focusing on marketing, like they're running everything. They've got people that can, push the levers where they need to. I can, from the big picture, I can, but I also have such an amazing team around me. I mean, our chief of product, our VP of growth, I mean, all those people, the strategists, are top in what they do. So, like, again, it's like you hire somebody to build your house. You don't need to show up every day.
Exactly.
The contractors are doing, the general contractor, and all their subs, they're working. And it's really amazing. You can't do this alone. That's the thing. It's easy to pivot when you're not doing everything. I think that's the question you ask people, is if they're having trouble, they're probably doing everything.
Yeah.
And that's why as an investor, that should be your first question is what's the team? Because like we're already at the stage where Mr. Wonderful and Mark Cuban have already said yes. We're past that.
Yeah.
right? So when you invest, like, so if I said, hey, I have Mark Cuban and Mr. Wonderful, and I have this new, widget that's going to do this, most investors would be like, I'm in. They don't even need to see it.
Yeah.
Right. So we're there. But the thing that they don't have is what we have. And what we like to say is like, and it's not a cocky thing, but we're doing this with or without people. And they can't do it without us. They
Mhm.
literally can't.
Well, it's kind of a funny, a thing going through my head is Tony Robbins always says success leaves clues.
Mhm.
And, I'm trying to process it here, but the reality is there's a process for success.
Mhm.
And I think that's the genius of Jared, bringing Grant Cardone together with incubators, the idea that, most founders don't get launched because they can't find funding, which again is the whole point of this show, is to help people
Right.
figure out how to get funded.
Right.
But the reality is maybe that's not the right question. It's not, maybe they don't fail because they don't get funded. Maybe they don't fail because they don't follow the process.
Yes. There's money everywhere. I learned this a very, very long time ago from a drunk driving lawyer. And he said, everybody's got money. They're not going to sit in jail. They might ask
Yeah.
grandma. They might ask 4 friends. They'll figure it out. The reason is because they're not giving people confidence because they don't have the team in place. It's the team. Like there's not a shortage of ideas. There's ideas everywhere. But do you have the team? Do you know how to sell, and can you execute? And our whole thing is 10x. So nobody's going to outwork us. Nobody is. Right. And nobody's going to have what we have in place because of the fact that we have the resources to be able to get them. And we already know what the process is as far as to go to market and how to sell. And that's where people, they just go, okay, I've got to this point, and then it fails. Why? Because they don't have sales.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to sell. And if they don't know how to sell, they can't even sell at getting the right people on their team. Because how are you going to get somebody to leave something they're already successful in to come and do this?
Absolutely.
Right? On a fake, or you're giving away half your company in equity to get some guy to come be your coder.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that.
Well, and I think
But,
that's, where I'm coming at this podcast from is I've seen those founders who give away their 90% of their equity and their firstborn child,
right,
and then they continue to work themselves to death trying to make
right,
that business succeed. And then it's almost pointless because, you're creating something for ego, not to add value to your world, but you
right,
also don't keep what you've built. And I love the idea of, working with a team where what you're, the deal you have up front, you've got the process to follow it. It
right.
just becomes a question of how quickly do we succeed.
Yeah, and one of the things that is sort of a cornerstone to the incubator in general is once we get funded, we're cash flow positive in 4 months, which most people are
Which,
like, what in the world? That's how you 10x stuff. I mean, just go Google Grant Cardone and look at, it's the whole philosophy
yeah,
of what we do in a day will take people 6 months.
yeah,
Right? It can for some people because they'll sit there and they'll still be worried about, their website copy, or they'll still be worried about this. And you know how there's people that they have to wait until everything's perfect before they go out and do stuff. And that's what kills a lot of people. A lot of people with the really good ideas are terrible salespeople.
yeah.
They're really good in
Well,
the technical side, but they're not like, let's just go get it out there and we can always tweak.
And I think that's one of the lessons I've learned the most in this space is the concept of the minimum viable product.
Right.
It's, you get technical people. I come from an accounting background, and
Yeah.
accountants are notorious for, we better gather some more facts before we do anything. It's that paralysis analysis thing.
Yeah.
Um, that's fascinating. So, which of your companies are you focusing? Like, where do you spend most of your time right now?
Well, we're in the funding stage now for the second one. Obviously the first one is being built, and it's a big build. But yeah, it's in the fundraising, and we only need 275,000 more. It's nothing. So, Yeah, so we're close. And you talk about the MVP, like that's where we're so tight on it. We've had so many calls, and this is like we have an expert in that space as far as how do we make it minimum and have people go, holy cow. Because you don't want it minimum and it's bland,
Yeah.
but you want people to go, holy cow. So like for example, if we could show somebody 5 restaurants in New York City where they can go and not have to wear a mask, or 5 places you can work in your space that you don't have to get vaccinated, or 3 places in your city where you can take your kids and get gluten-free and dairy-free options, right? You don't need 100, right? So like when we say minimum, let's get the minimum amount and not get, we're all about cash flow. So we're going to do what we can to get cash flow as quick as possible, because, we don't win until the investors win. So we have every incentive to get them a return. And what we do a little unique in some senses is we're going to distribute after we get 4 months of cash of expenses in the bank. And then there's also the exit, and this particular one is creating cash flow from the beginning. It's not like Instagram, which sold, I think, Facebook for $1 billion, but they had no revenue model. They're just burning cash. We have no debt.
Yeah.
Zero, which is huge too, right?
They're
not having to pay for, a $800,000 a month, building, or, a bunch of plants in the lobby and, computer systems and all that. Like, we run it really, really, really lean.
I love that. Now we're going to run out of time, and you're a fascinating guy. I could talk to you for a long time on this. What advice would you give to would-be entrepreneurs who are just starting out? As you said, you're in that triangle where there are a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who's got that idea that their mom has patted them on the head and said, "You're so smart, son." What advice would you give them? What's the first thing they should be doing to turn that vision, that idea into a business?
Well, I think the first thing you do is you write it down as quickly as possible, and then you share it with a couple people, and then go to a little plug. Go to 10x Incubator. Oh, 10x Pitch. I'll get you the actual one. I can't remember. There's like 3 websites, and fill out an application to have the idea heard. The quicker you can do that, the problem is people aren't successful because when they have these notions of brilliance and these notions of inspiration, they stop. And I learned this selling door to door. Like when you get a sale, go to the next door. Don't sit in your car because you're going to come down and then you're going to be like, oh, Mrs. Jones is going to reject me. Like when you make a sale, you're going through and say, hey, Jeff just bought, let me show you what he got. Your enthusiasm. So write it down and then get in front of somebody that already has the process together to make it a reality. And the majority of people don't. Like there's not a lot of these, incubators where you can even have access to explain your idea, right? So even filling out the application is enough where it organizes it to the point where you could get accepted. I had a 17-year-old that was accepted in the incubator a few weeks ago, 17, and it's a crypto idea, right, for blockchain. But I made him write. I got it. It's great, but put it in a format where you can do something with it. And I just think you've got to tell people, and you've got to have it written down, and then you've got to find the most sort of tech salesy whoever, Google incubators, whatever. I mean, 10x Incubator is the easiest just because they're going to give an up or down on if it's something that they would even want to highlight, and they're really different from like Shark Tank, because Shark Tank is, I know it's all for TV, but they're really trying to shut you down.
Yeah. And
we're trying to give you every opportunity for us to say yes. Does that make sense? It's almost like when you're judging like a gymnastics contest for the kids that are like 6, right? You're trying to give them every opportunity to get every point you can. It's not the Olympics. Yeah. They can't wait to so, that's where we're at. And because we believe that there's so many ideas that just go to the grave. And, but the other problem is great ideas are nothing without having the team in place. And that's why we put this whole thing together, is when you have every piece that you're going to need to be successful and you already have it, then your success is guaranteed, right? As long as you work hard.
I,
And
I
realize it's
love
going
that.
to be frustrating. It's going to be frustrating. It's lonely and it's frustrating, but it's worth it.
I love that. And I think I'd like to echo that, find an incubator with like-minded people, because, you can't go this alone. It's a long, lonely process, and, you're going to question your sanity most days.
Yeah,
You want to be around other people who get it. And, I love the incubator concept because, there's resources around.
yeah,
But honestly, if you're looking for an incubator, ask what their process is, because
right.
a lot of them, unfortunately, they've got retired business people who are bored and want to do something, so they become mentors. And really, truly, it's kind of armchair mentoring. It's, when I sit in a lawn chair and tell my kid how to cut the grass, it's like, yeah, yeah, go a little further. It's
Right.
not skin in the game. You're not there helping. So look for somebody who's got your back. Now, Neal, is there any story you'd like to share that you haven't? Because I think you have such a varied background. Give our listeners one last story, and then we'll wrap it up with your contact details.
Well, yeah. So the other thing that I do, this is sort of more of a hobby, right? Because I'm busy doing things, but we're developing in the beginning process of developing some like micro cottage communities up by a lake where I'm at, which is kind of cool. Like they're not tiny houses, but close. And I just have a passion for people being able to unplug and get out and spend time with their families and connect and do that. And for those that want to move out of a city and live kind of more out in the country, that's something that we're working on. And it's pretty cool. But I've got, I guess the story is I've got 3 boys and an awesome wife, and they inspire me. You want to win for your kids, you want to win for your wife. You want to create a legacy. You get to a certain point in your age, and you're not going to be around forever. And the cool thing for your listeners that have an idea or are scaling something is you're building a legacy. That thing's going to be hopefully going on long past you. And something I learned early is the answer lies behind the next door. You just got to knock. And when you stop knocking is when you get frustrated and realize that, I believe God's got something good behind every door. But if you don't knock, you don't know what it is. And it's usually going 3 or 4 more past when you were going to quit. And there it is, knocking on the door, wanting to quit at 6 o'clock at night on a Saturday, but I stop at 9:30 because that's what I said I was going to do. And the last 3 houses by. But if I'd quit at 6, I would have never had that. And it's the same thing with being an entrepreneur. So yeah, but I appreciate you having me on, and I hope everybody just goes out there and rocks it. And if we can help in any way, we're happy to do that. Lend a listening ear, hear an idea, support you in any way we can.
I love it. Now, where can my viewers go to connect with you? What's the best platform or place to
I think
learn more?
email probably is the best. It's just libertasgps@gmail.com. We kept that simple right out of the gate for now. And just shoot me an email and just put something in the subject line that hey, heard your podcast or something, and we'd love to hear from you. And again, any way we can help you, we're happy to do it. Again, we get where we are, and there's nothing we love more than people that get inspired because we know you have a story inside you. It may not turn into a business, but if it does, like, you're going to need people just like we did when we were in that position. And that's what it's about. It's about helping people, like you were talking about Bob Berg, the go-giver. So totally.
I love it. Well, Neal, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate
Yes,
your
sir.
time today. It was a
Yeah.
real pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much.